join? Yeah?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So we'll just wait a minute or two and then we can start. And while we are waiting, there's some messages in the chat from Yoliswa around the global stock take process. While we're waiting, we'd appreciate it if you could have a look at that as well. Ingrid, should we start?
Yes, I think we should start. So Gazan, maybe you can kick off the session, and the professor hopefully will soon jump in.
Okay, thank you, Ingrid. Well, welcome everyone again. Welcome to the second session of day 2 of a 3-day event that we have planned as the Africa Resilience Hub. So I'd like you to welcome to this session, which will be hosted by Refuture, which is rethinking and redesigning the future of food. And the focus of the session will be looking at the question, can living labs promote food systems transformation towards regeneration and inclusivity? Refuture will be sharing their experiences. And for those who are joining us for the first time today, welcome to you. And for those who are coming from the first session, I hope you enjoyed this session as well. And I'll be handing over to Ingrid Koenigs, who will be introducing her team and kicking us off. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome you to this session, and thanks, Amanda, for welcoming us so warmly here. So very briefly, as an introduction, which I will do now, since Professor Bebe from the Nakuru University is not here with us yet, but he will hopefully join us very soon. So in the Refuture project, we are looking at how collaborations between thinkers, doers, and enablers can support transformations in the food systems for food systems to become more inclusive and more regenerative. So not only on the production side of the food systems, but also on the other aspects of food systems. So how do people consume? How do people make money in the food system, and how do people collaborate along value chains and along across communities. So to this end, we are closely cooperating with partners in Ethiopia, in Kenya, and in Uganda. And they are all representatives from each of the country teams are here with us today. And there will be ample time to discuss with them and to be in a dialogue with them. So in each of the countries, we have been working together on setting up, establishing living labs. And living labs are platforms for collaboration between thinkers, doers, and enablers to co-create new ideas for innovations in the food system and to experiment with new practices. So what works and what doesn't, and how can we improve existing practices? Which doesn't mean that these practices are new. These innovations are often actually building on practices that are old and that were already used for many generations and that have sometimes been forgotten. So the innovation in the living labs is very much about the collaboration between the doers, those farmers and other practitioners in the field that have knowledge from actually working with the soils and with the food production practices, and with people from universities and from governments that have been thinking about innovation and that are also helping to facilitate innovation. So today, in the session is consisting of few elements. We will start with some videos, some inspiring videos from partners across the 3 countries, thinkers and doers, to give you an idea of what the living labs are about. Then we continue with a panel interview with a thinker, an enabler, and a doer. And we will introduce them to you once the panel interview is starting. And then we end the discussion with an open dialogue with all of you, with all participants involved in this session, to talk about how this living lab type of collaborations can support transformations in the food system. And we would like to collect your experiences and ideas about how to further improve this way of working. Practically, if you have questions, please put your questions in the chat. I will keep an eye on the chat and address the questions in due time. If you like to speak up, please raise your hand. And I also might ask you to clarify your question by speaking after you wrote your question in the chat. So feel free to dive into the discussion, to join. And I see that just Professor Bebe has joined. So I would like to welcome you, Professor Bebe, to also welcome and give a brief introduction from your perspective. Thank you. Bebe, do you can you speak, or is that not possible from your end? If not possible, perhaps you could write in the chat. Maybe it's a good idea to start with one of the first videos, and then once Professor Bebe is able to speak and has sorted out the audio, then he will be invited to give an introduction. So this first video is a video about the Living Lab in Uganda, the West Nile Innovation Hub, by Professor Richard Malingumu.
Yeah, my name is Richard Malingumu. and I'm from Muni University, specifically from the Faculty of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences. And we collaborate with the West Nile Innovations Hub, which is the Ugandan Living Lab facilitated by the Refuture Project. The Living Lab has built our knowledge and promoted our understanding of the transdisciplinary collaborations between the thinkers, the enablers, and the doers. We have also been able to understand the potential of the various actors along the food value chain to innovate in different directions. We now have an idea of the dynamics, the synergies, and the trade-offs involved. The mandate of Muni University is to produce outputs in the areas of research and innovations and community outreach and engagement in addition to teaching and learning. Participating in the promotion of the growth of the Ugandan Living Lab is therefore a contribution towards achieving this. Linkage and interaction with sister institutions through meetings, discussions, and exposure visits facilitated through the Living Labs have opened up opportunities for joint collaborations. Our hopes and wishes are that this collaboration gets more concrete in all dimensions, both for further evolution of the Living Labs and for other joint research ventures along the same trajectory to achieve a lasting solution to the food, nutrition, and environmental challenges on the planet Earth.
So thank you. This was a video by Mr. Malingo from Muni University, representing the West Nile Innovation Hub in Uganda. I would like to show you a second video by Professor Yehenu Selassie from the Ethiopian Living Lab, where he is explaining how potatoes can be a game changer in the food system.
My name is Yeheno Gebrselassie. I'm a professor of soil science at Bahar Dar University. I will present you a short video on potato, a game changer in the potato Rhodes grass dairy-based innovation. Potato is an important food security and hunger reliever crop in Amara region and in several other parts of the country by virtue of its ability to mature earlier than most other crops at time of critical food shortage. Potato was introduced in Amara region to improve food security. Yield of potato was improved from 7 tons to 35 tons per hectare. The income from potato production was about 3.75 times more than that of from maize. Farmers were happy on potato yield, but started to complain about feed shortage to their animals as maize stover yield was diminished because the expansion of potato came at the expense of maize crop. To solve this problem, we introduced Rhodes grass. It is a perennial grass that was harvested over 10 tons per hectare. Farmers could produce sufficient fodder besides to selling the grass seed at a price of 160 birr per kilogram. The introduction of the Rhodes grass triggered the introduction of Holstein Friesian cows that were high yielders compared to local breeds. Farmers were earning up to 12,000 birr per month net monthly income from milk sale. You can see that these cows are very healthy and they are fed by Rhodes grass that was harvested green in from the field. The manure from the cow yard was returned back to the potato and Rhodes grass fields, introducing circularity. You can see that the farmer is preparing compost from manure, green materials and other weedy materials from the field. The introduction of potato as a game changer brought about livelihood improvement and asset building to the farmers, healthy diet to the family, and better schooling to children. It also created participatory engagement of thinkers, enablers, and doers that brought about co-creations like marketing, processing of potato and milk products, and coordination among key stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Yehinu. And this is an example of how circularity in food production can serve both farmers in terms of higher incomes, but also serve communities in terms of more choices, more dietary choices. And the Living Lab is working on experimentation around the potato production and the compost production in Ethiopia. So the third and the fourth video are from champions, innovation champions in Kenya. The first one is from James Manya. He has a startup in fresh fish products in Kenya. And the second one is from Mrs. Mildred Day, who is running a farmers composting community using waste streams from Nakuru City.
Of Green Thumb CBO, or community-based organization, and this is our fish processing unit. I am a member of Green Thumb CBO is a member of the Nakuru Living Lab, which is the coming together of organizations and individuals that are in different areas of different value chains. We are in the fisheries value chain, and we've been able to interact and meet different players, from consumers to producers to researchers and even government officials that are in the fisheries value chain. So one of the main benefits that we have derived from being part of the Nakuru Living Lab is the linkages. We've been able to strengthen linkages with the Nakuru County government that has exposed us to different platforms and events where we've been able to showcase what we are doing, which is intensive fish production, as well as fish processing into different products such as fish sausages, fish samosas, and meatballs. Another benefit that we've been grateful for is the capacity building, where the Living Lab has been able to send us to different learning journeys and trainings, hands-on training, towards the development of safe food and learning about regenerative and inclusive food systems within the fisheries value chain. However, we've faced different challenges in the process of implementing the Nakuru Living Lab. One of the challenges is that the Living Lab setup, which includes doers, enablers, and thinkers, is quite vast, and it's a new system of doing things. It is at the onset, it is quite difficult to convince say farmers and other suppliers to join the Living Lab because of the lack of immediate financial benefits. However, once they get to understand what the Living Lab means and how it brings together different players to develop products that are safe and systems that are inclusive and regenerative, they welcome the idea very well. Another challenge is that there is a limited financial capability, or rather resource capability, where while everybody, or all the players and the doers especially, are interested in creating systems that are more inclusive and regenerative, it requires a change from the traditional way of doing things. Many people are not open to making huge financial investment into it. However, with the coming up of piecemeal implementation, for example, at in our fish production, we are doing aquaponics, which is using fish wastewater to grow plants. And the idea is being welcomed by more farmers because they are able to implement it slowly, as opposed to implementing the whole system at once. As well as the farmers are able to implement it using what they already have, which are the dug fish ponds, as opposed to digging or building new ponds for the new systems. However, with these challenges, the idea is being more welcome. Farmers and even the smallholder farmers are embracing the idea of regenerative and inclusive food systems more, with coming up with new ideas themselves. Because of the interactions that you've seen with the smallholder farmers and the researchers and everybody within the Living Lab, I foresee a future for the Living Lab where all areas or all nodes of the value chains are represented. I foresee a time when consumers are able to dictate the quality of food that they want produced. The suppliers are able to comply with what the consumers require, and more information will be available to all the areas of the different value chains. I foresee a time when the Living Lab has grown so much that it becomes the norm for producers to first inform the consumers of the production processes, the inputs to their production, and the consumers having a say in having produce and products that is compliance to regenerative and inclusive systems and ideals. I also foresee a time when the Living Lab has more players where we will not be limited to the fisheries value chain or the production of dairy products and organic
Okay, I think the video ended, but thanks to Mr. James Manya from Green Camp and for the introduction into his startup in fresh fish products. So the second one is Mildred Day from Green Camp.
Welcome to this interview where we seek to understand the challenges, the successes, and also the outlook of Living Lab in regenerative and inclusive food systems. With me is Mildred, and I will ask her to introduce herself and tell us about the Nakuru Living Lab.
My name is Mildred Day from Nakuru, Greencom. We are part of among the innovation cases that are supported by the Nakuru Living Lab. We are engaged in organic waste recycling and production of organic fertilizer, foliar, and biopesticide. The Living Lab is key in transforming the food systems towards regenerative and inclusivity. In the Living Lab, we are linked with different actors, where we have the thinkers who are the researchers, we also have the enablers, the government, and also us, the innovators who are the actors. And through this networking, we've been able to have great mileage. We have been able to work closely with the county government in supporting them in proper waste management. Previously, the market waste was being taken to the dump site. We have intercepted that chain, brought the waste to our composting site where we use the window composting system and use the product for soil regeneration.
Thank you so much, Mildred. Now, in all these activities, how has the Living Lab helped us?
The Living Lab has been key in bridging the gap that was there among the actors. The Living Lab also has been very instrumental in validation. We have been able to test our product, known where we were before, and through the test results, we've been able to scale up the quality of our product. We've also done scientific research of our product on crops and seen how the difference between the crop grown using the regenerative system and those which are grown without. And also the Living Lab has helped us to create awareness of our products. We were not able to connect to other people who are key in our processes, like the farmers. But through the power message training, we've been able to have videos that showcase our production and showcase the performance of our product and have more farmers adopting organic fertilizer in their crop production.
Thank you so much, Mildred. Could you outline some of the challenges that you have encountered?
Our major challenge is financing. As we deal with the organic waste, which is very bulky, like the market waste, we need to mechanize our processes. By financing, we'll be able to buy the machineries that will be able to break down the waste particles and have better quality product in terms of compost, and also increase the volumes that we process, so we are able to create a greater level of employment. We'll also be able to reach out to farmers and teach them and train them why they should use organic fertilizer instead of the inorganic fertilizer. We'll also be able to incentivize our waste component, enabling most waste producers to bring their waste to our center for recycling instead of dumping it.
Oh, that is great. So Mildred, how do you see the future of the Living Lab, and what do you think will make it successful?
The Living Lab is key in attainment of the SDGs, and we would like to see the Living Lab being financed more to better support the innovation cases to a level where they are sustainable. They are able to have products that are selling in the market and earning from their innovation cases. We believe that if the innovation cases are well supported and the impacts documented, then they can act as centers where others will come and learn and also replicate similar innovations in their region.
Thank you so much, Mildred, for the insights. And we wish you all the best as you seek to transform food systems towards inclusivity and regenerativeness. Thank you.
Thanks for this interview, Mildred and Dennis. And then we will now move to an interview from Uganda, a champion from the West Nile Innovation Lab, Mr. Inaku Patrick Wallen. And if the sound is too soft of this video, please turn it up.
I'm called Inaku Patrick Wallen. I am the proprietor and managing director of Wallen Mixed Farm. Now, Wallen Mixed Farm is one of those farms which is under the West Nile Innovations Hub. And its particular interest has been the zero wastage innovative case. What is this zero wastage innovative case? This is where on this farm we do not waste anything. A wastage from one, considered a wastage from one source, is actually a raw material which can generate a complete product for the next source. For instance, we have the cows giving us the poop for the biogas and for feeding the maggots. The maggots feed the chicken, and the chicken can be sold out to feed, to pay the workers and other things. The Living Lab is all about bringing people, doers, thinkers, and enablers to create a kind of regenerative and all-inclusive food system in West Nile, and a kind of platform where these people think, where they create, and where they disseminate what they have thought and created about, to create really a zero-free hunger society in West Nile. Now, the Living Lab is going to benefit us, or is benefiting us, from a number of parameters. One is the issue of bringing together, I would say, the brains of the food system in West Nile. Those who are doing it, those who are helping, those who are doing it, and then those who are doing the corrections, that is the thinkers, the enablers, and the doers. Two, this food system, this idea of the West Nile Innovations Hub brings together the innovations, develops the innovations, and then after that creates an environment of adaptability of these innovations to really create something which is easily adaptable by anyone. And for me, this is one of the best benefits of this Innovations Hub. In this Living Lab, The first thing is the mindset challenge. Not many people are ready to believe that these innovations can be adapted and can be done. Two, the issue of policy. We have policies which are so unfair that they may not allow these innovations to take form. They actually discourage these innovations. But we also have these challenges because these innovations need capital. So the financing is basically still very, very minimal. For me, the future is great. It is great in the sense that getting together people who think, who do, and who help the thinkers and the doers, we learn by doing. And so when you see a fellow farmer doing something, an innovator doing something, you get impressed that you can do it. So for me, the future is great.
So that was a video by Patrick Wallen from the West Nile Innovation Lab. And I'm sorry if the sound was too low and if you didn't hear it well, but I think he was giving a very good presentation on how living labs and the collaborations in the living labs can create an environment of innovation through being very adaptable. So to being able to experiment and innovate on a continuous basis while addressing challenges that are related to policies and to finances. So those are challenges in the enabling environment. We'll get back to that. So the last video we want to show you is a video by Dr. Antene from the Ethiopian Living Lab. And this is an example of how the living labs can offer a space for experimentation.
My name is Anthony Bawa. I am a soil fertility researcher and center director for Adit Agricultural Research Center. Cost of mineral fertilizer has more than doubled from 2,000 to 5,000 Ethiopian birr just in 1 year. Due to this reason, farmers did not apply the required amount of mineral fertilizer in the current cropping season. The constraint will ultimately affect crop yield and food supply in Ethiopia. However, the problem triggered the intensive use of compost supplemented with mineral fertilizer. This process is called integrated soil fertility management. The introduction of compost has a lot of benefits. Among others, it provides essential element to plant, hence it improves crop production. Compost adds organic carbon to the soil, hence it improves soil properties like cation exchange capacity, aggregate stability, soil bulk density, and water holding capacity. Compost reduces cost of production as it reduces investment to the purchase of mineral fertilizer. And compost is especially useful for poor farmers who cannot afford to buy expensive mineral fertilizers. Compost improves resilience to climate change. It is very useful in improving drought resilience building due to the improvement in water holding capacity of the soil. This was proved from the failure of maize crops that were planted without compost in Shashamane district of Oromia regional state. The maize crop planted with compost survived the drought effect. Even though the benefit of compost is well known, crop response to soil and combined use of compost and inorganic fertilizer is not well studied. Hence, under OTPAVA project, Adit Agricultural Research Center is conducting research on this topic. Let us see together the performance of crop to application of different rates of compost and inorganic fertilizer. This is our experiment. The experiment side evaluation of integrated soil fertility management. The compost is an organic fertilizer for the yield of maize and soil property. And the first plot is treatment 2. It is only 4 hectare vermicompost added to the plot. The second plot is treatment 7. It is we applied 8 ton per hectare vermicompost and 100% recommended NP fertilizer. The third plot is treatment 8. This is only the 100% recommended NP fertilizer. The other plot is treatment 4. It is 4 ton per hectare vermicompost with 100% recommended NP fertilizer. This one is treatment 3. The plot receives 4 ton per hectare vermicompost and 50% recommended NP fertilizer. The other treatment 5, we applied 8 ton per hectare vermicompost without inorganic fertilizer. It is only the compost. This is the control plot. That means without compost and without inorganic fertilizer. And last but not the least, the treatment 6. We applied 8 ton per hectare vermicompost and 50% recommended NP fertilizer. From this preliminary performance of the crops, it is possible to conclude that the integrated use of compost and mineral fertilizer is better than the application of the application of inorganic fertilizer or compost as a soil application. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Antenne. And I think these differences between those plots were quite striking in terms of how the maize has been growing with the different treatments. But this is one of the examples of experimentation that is going on in the living lab settings. So this is the end of the first part of the session, where we wanted to show you a variety of voices that are all linked to the living labs in the 3 countries. And I would now invite our next speakers in the panel for a panel interview. But before that, I wanted to check with Professor Bebe from Nakuru University if you are able to speak and if you would address the participants. And if not Professor Bebe, then perhaps Tom Ovino, are you able to speak? And if not, I would like to open the floor for Mr. Watros Tefera, a living lab manager in Ethiopia, Mrs. Sylvia Kuria, organic farmer and a champion of the Nakuru Living Lab in Kenya. And our third person on the panel is Mrs. Grace Karanja. She's Director of Environment in Nakuru County, but I am not sure if she is here with us. So, Mr. Tewodros, could you please introduce yourself? I will first give the word to Sylvia then. Please, Sylvia, could you introduce yourself and say something about your farm?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. My name is Sylvia Kuria, and I'm a small-scale organic farmer in Kenya. So we have our farms just near Nairobi, and beyond just being able to grow our food using agroecology and regenerative agriculture, we also sell our produce. So we also have a shop where we sell our produce in Nairobi, and not just from us, but we also buy produce from many other farmers from all over Kenya. And we also train farmers on how to convert into sustainable farming practices. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Sylvia. I'm very happy that you could make it and join us today. I see Mr. Gazan from Ethiopia is here. Could you please step in and introduce yourself and say something about the Ethiopian Living Lab? Or maybe somebody else from the Ethiopian team, if possible. And if you're encountering technical issues,
do you hear me?
Oh, hello.
Yes, my name is Theodros. I'm working on Ethiopian Refugee project, and we are managing 2 living labs. The first lab is the potato Rhodes dairy innovation case, which is a game changer in a smallholder farming system. We are trying to scale up this game changer innovation to the rest of other areas with similar agroecology and similar farmer setting. To this effect, we establish a living lab which bring different stakeholders with different roles. So the research systems, the extension, NGOs, private sectors are coming together to work on these innovation cases to scale up and benefit the different actors in the living lab, like the farmers, the private sectors who are depend on potato for their business, those who are depend on dairy. So we are working in South Africa to promote the impact of game changer innovation to wider scale. In the second one is where we work on black pepper. The farming system is characterized by agroforestry system, where regenerative practices are applied by farmers. However, the system is challenged with the problem of market linkage, processing, and also productivity. So the Living Lab is trying to address these bottlenecks. So the private sector are engaged to promote the black pepper export, and the research system is working to improve productivity, and the extension system is assisting the farmers to adopt different cultural practices, which is regenerative in nature. So the Ethiopian Living Lab is established at district level. However, to harness the benefits of different stakeholders, we also established a think tank at regional and national level. This think tank is giving strategic direction and also address systemic bottlenecks which cannot be addressed by practice. So we are working at national level to overcome policy-related challenges. Thank you very much. Back to you, Kone.
Thank you so much, Tevodros, and I'm happy that you could step in. And maybe you can switch on your camera as well, so that we can see you if we enter the dialogue. In the meantime, I also saw Professor Bebe. And Professor Bebe, would you be able to, if you're able to speak, please do so. We would be happy to hear you. And if not possible, then you can just speak up any moment when.
Yes.
Okay, there you are. Professor Bebe, please. It would be nice if you could.
Trouble with the internet and power. Hello.
Yes, we hear you well,
yes,
Professor.
I'm there. You're asking me to. I didn't hear what you asked of me.
If you could give a brief introduction as well, because you were supposed to open the session, but because of the technical issues, you couldn't. So if you would like to do that now, you're most welcome.
Allow me to share?
Yes.
Would you allow me to share?
Please do.
Hello?
Yeah. How can Professor receive sharing functions?
He is the co-host, so he should be able to share.
Yeah, good.
Is that, but I'm not seeing.
There is a green button on the bottom of the screen that you should click to share.
Yes, but where is it?
And otherwise, just speak without slides. That's also a possibility. If you are speaking, you are muted. So please unmute and you can just tell your story to the audience.
Hi, Professor Bawa, you are on mute.
I suggest we just start with the panel discussion because I think Professor Bawa has some technical issues. So let's start with the people that are present here today. And so once Professor is able to join, he can step in at a later point during the session. So we have Sylvia
Can
here.
I?
Oh, yes.
But I'll proceed without the slide because it seems to be
yes.
not working for me. I'll introduce the living labs in the East Africa, which we are implementing under the name of Refuture. They are in Uganda, Kenya, and Ethiopia, has already been given to you. And the ones that have been shown to you, we are trying to illustrate how can these living labs be able to promote food systems transformation with the focus on the regeneration and inclusivity. I want to say that regeneration for us here also will include circulative practices, as you have seen, those that are using waste put together. The three groups that are put, they've already explained to you, but for us, the living lab are basically learning environments where different stakeholders, both public, private, and NGOs working together with the farmers, are testing, evaluating, and improving those practices that are regenerative and can address challenges that they face in their local food systems. And through this, they hope to be able to scale this to others and continuously then sustain the transformation that will come, because all of them are connecting also with the processors, as has been explained to you, from what is on the fish, and also the consumers, as they said. Why the Living Lab? The idea of the Living Lab was that this would enable local innovations potential and support the transformation of the food system, in which everybody comes in to make a contribution. By that, they co-innovate, and those are the ideas that the practitioners, we call them innovation owners, try out as a group, but also as individuals, and this becomes what they validate to use forward towards transforming the food systems. I don't have to repeat, but you have seen in Ethiopia they have two being implemented. All of them, whether in Kenya or Uganda or Ethiopia, all the living labs, the four of them, are convened by the universities. In Ethiopia, two universities, Jimma University and Bahir, working in two different places, the South Achifa and Tepi. In Uganda, Muni University is convening the one of West Nile, which is Narwa. And in Egerton, where I'm part of, we are convened the one in Nakuru. So the living labs are working at different scales, regional and national, mainly Ethiopia, but Kenya and Uganda are regional based from the setup they have explained. In Kenya, if I explain more, we have 10 different innovation cases working on different aspects of regenerative food systems. They are either experimenting and learning together in the dairy value chain, aquaculture, waste management and composting. Some are working in potato production and horticulture crops, and also organic farming. We have one group that focusing on ecosystem conservation. Together, they have drafted innovation agendas, which is supporting the innovation cases through the vouchers given to them by the Living Lab to try and validate those innovations that work for them, like the one Mildred explained. So through this, they are creating and validating new products and partnerships and entering into the market to influence the consumers. Capacity building is strong in all this that is given by the thinkers, the knowledge institutions, universities working with the research institutions, and also some of the NGOs come in. We have other groups that come in to facilitate, like the banks. In Kenya, we have banks that have come to support them, the equity. And at the initial, they have been training them financial literacy in order to support the financial investment that they make into their innovations. So people are being empowered with the visibility and ability to connect with different stakeholders. Together, then we are making regeneration and inclusive food systems work for us together. In summary, in Uganda, as I summarize, there are 3 circular innovations, which basically focuses on the farm level, reducing on external inputs. They are also growing vegetables, but the interesting thing here is that they're involving schools, parents, and students in producing this for food, but also for income and also for improving the land. And lastly, they have fisheries and agriculture. This is through improving quality of the fingerlings or the feed quality that they assess. So in short, these are the things that we are dealing, and we have a website where all these informations can be found.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Professor Bebe, for your introduction and overview of the Living Labs. I think this is a good moment to go into an open discussion where we have Sylvia from organic farm in Kenya, and we have the Watros from the Ethiopian Living Lab. So let us see what is happening in practice. I would like to hear from both of you. And in the meantime, to the audience, you have been hearing a lot of input and information. So if you have questions, more practical questions, then please post them in the chat, and then we will take them along in the dialogue. So, Sylvia, I would like to ask you, so we have been talking about regenerative and inclusive food systems in East Africa, and the contribution of Living Labs to those regenerative and inclusive food systems, short RIFs. What is a regenerative and inclusive food system to you in your practice?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kane, for that. And I'm very happy to share our story. So basically, if you think about it, and we think about our food systems, let's accept that in the past, our food systems in a way have failed us, because for many years, we've been trying to make sure that people on the African continent are fed, and yet, so it means there must be a break, there must be a problem somewhere. And now we have to fix that problem to make sure that even with the negative effects of climate change, we are still able to feed us. And, some of these terms can be very confusing, but, just to break it down very easily, when I think about regeneration, you think about the main principles of keeping the soil covered, growing the soil microbiome, like reducing the use of synthetic fertilizer, reducing tillage, diversity, and making sure that, you have a good balance on the farm. And when you think about an inclusive food system, you're thinking about how do you manage food, all the way from the producers all the way to the consumers. And when you think about how you can actually be able to marry regeneration in inclusive food systems is by having a holistic way of seeing the food systems and how they work. And for us, when you think about the holistic way is it possible that farmers can actually think about how we can change the way, we can change the way we grow our food. Like for us, we're able to grow a lot of food in a very small area of land by using these principles of taking care of our soils, having the green cover, reducing the use of synthetic fertilizer, and making sure that we have a lot of food. And when you think about the inclusive food systems, is it holistic? Are we able to work with women who are the custodians of the land, who are making sure that their children are eating well and they have nutritious foods, and being able to bring in all the actors and ensure that we have enough food on the African continent? And my dream and my challenge out there for the other farmers would be that if we actually would give regeneration a chance, we can actually have a chance of having more sustainable food systems. We actually have a chance of being able to make sure the retailers and the consumers that everyone is benefiting by growing food in the right way, making sure there's enough safe food for the people on the African continent. And it's possible. And yeah, thank you for that question.
Thank you so much, Sylvia, for your reflection on regenerative and inclusive food systems. And I would like to ask to Professor Watros, what is your, do you have a response to Sylvia? Do you agree, or are there elements that you would like to add on what she said?
Thank you. I agree with Sylvia's explanation. On top of her, we believe that the main role of Living Lab is to reverse the trend of degradation, which is manifested in our East Africa, like land degradation, low productivity, food and nutrition insecurity. So the major role of Living Lab is to ensure sustainable and regenerative inclusive food system. One of its major role is using the regenerative inclusive food system approach. We try to ensure fair income for smallholder farmers, to promote inclusiveness, and to introduce regenerative practices that contribute to ecosystem health. In this regard, the Living Lab facilitates the innovation development process by bringing different actors. It also showcases experimentation and validation of innovation, like we have seen from the 3 countries. And it also plays a role in the dissemination of holistic approach and system thinking to address complicated issues. So in short, the Living Lab is instrumental in terms of fostering better coordination and collaboration. It also gives open space for mutual learning, partnership, and co-creation. So in short, the Living Lab is a very powerful tools in terms of re-engineering the power imbalance and the role of knowledge generation and dissemination in the agricultural development landscape.
Thank you so much, Watros, for your reflection and for your talk on the role that Living Labs can play. So I would like to ask Sylvia, as a doer, as we call you, what is it that, how can a Living Lab collaboration help you in practice? Can you maybe mention some examples?
Okay, thank you very much for that. And maybe let me just share real quick. When the Living Labs first visited the farm, our farm, I was really excited because I finally felt that we actually have, shortened, if not closed, the gap between science and practice. many times we find that the researchers and scientists are very far removed from the farmers, and the farmers are wallowing somehow in the dark and not knowing how they can be able to improve their farming systems. But for me, how I see, the living labs working and, supporting for us farmers, like personally, I enjoy doing a lot of research. I enjoy reading and experimenting and trying things on the farm. And I find working with the living labs has been amazing because we are able to validate the farmer-led research. And one thing I really enjoy about the living labs is just the focus on the farmer-led research. How do we work with the farmers to make sure that we get validated experiences that can be able to be spread across the board? So that has been the most exciting thing for me, that we are starting to bridge the gap between science and practice. We are starting to bring the researchers and the scientists closer to the farm, and we are starting to get solutions that are practical and can be used by farmers, and that can also be used by all the people within the whole food value chain to actually make sure that we have sustainable food systems that can be able to feed people on the African continent.
Thank you, Sylvia. I think what you say about farmer-led research is very key to the Living Lab collaboration that we're intending to build. And that also relates to the question by Lucia in the chat. And Lucia is asking whether it has been easy to convene the different actors. So Lucia, would you like to maybe ask your question using your voice, so to say, if you can?
Hello, thank you. Yes, I was just wondering whether the university as a convener has been a good means. Having worked with researchers in the past, I know that sometimes they struggle to convene other type of actors, and there is a less ownership sometimes when something is initiated by researchers. So I was wondering whether in your case it has worked well, or whether ownership, like you are seeing it actually like across the whole system of also the enablers, the doers. So it was just a curiosity question, because we have struggled in the past starting from the researchers.
Thank you, Lucia. So who would like to reflect on that? Watros, could you maybe be first in responding?
Yes, the question is very right. Bringing actors to work in a synergetic manner is not an easy job. So it requires a lot of effort. So in the Living Lab, we start with defining a common vision, what we want to achieve, what objective we want to address, and what priority we want to address. So changing the mindset is critically important, and we spent quite a number of months trying to really bringing the right mindset and also a culture of working together. So once you address that challenge, people start to work together and understand the bigger picture. This is happening. Still, our Living Lab is under construction. There are a lot of challenges we want to address, especially when it comes to financing. It is not easy to mobilize finance to work together. There are areas which are a gray area need to be addressed. But in general, our observation is once people understand the bigger picture, they start working. And we are really having a success story when it comes to using a Living Lab. One thing I would like to underscore is a Living Lab is not a collection of stakeholders. It is a stakeholders who come together really to address a common challenge, and they have to see also a benefit out of, which really come through the Living Lab. When they are benefited through this kind of mechanism, they start to investing their time and also resources.
Thank you, Watros. Thanks so much. So I think in the meantime, Professor Gazan has been solving his microphone issue. So maybe you can test your microphone and also reflect on the question on the collaboration.
Do you mind if I say something real quick, Anna? If you don't mind, kindly, just a quick one. It will just be 20 seconds. Yeah, I just wanted to say one of the things that I see, like I was just saying, one of the things that I feel can work like in the collaboration, you know, as you've had, the living labs are quite young, you know, some are 1 year, some are less than a year, but it's basically being able to work with champion farmers, you know, get the farmers who have accepted, you know, who are interested in the new strategies, and being able to work closely with them, I think would work very well also, because the champion farmers would be the example. Because, you know, farmers listen to other farmers. A researcher can come in there and people will be like, are you sure you're saying the right thing? But if a farmer, the neighbor, tells the neighbor, then they will listen. So if you have champion farmers who are willing to try out, like more sustainable farming practices, that actually helps the researchers be able to do so much more work. So thank you for that 2 minutes.
Thank you, Sylvia. So you would actually propose the living labs to be led by champion farmers, or to be in the center at least of the living labs, and I think that's a very true statement. So I was wondering to hear a reflection, if possible, from Gazan, from your Ethiopian experience.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay.
We hear you, Gazan. So please speak. Gazan, please speak if you can. We heard your voice.
Again, actually, I want to also highlight what Sylvia was actually saying, particularly in the past, where innovation has been designed by researcher and pushed from top down, and then the problem that Sylvia was mentioning is actually there. But now, because in this particular, in the living lab, the co-creation issues, ownership issues, and also the benefits is quite valid by the participant of the living lab. And particularly, and we are, like what she said, in Ethiopia, we call them the model farmers or the champions farmers, are the one who are actually in a better position to take technologies, test technologies, and co-create. And so that we organize a fellow farmers that learn from the farmers who can actually expand the innovation that we are actually promoting. So and I think the fear has been there in the past, but because now we are promoting more on a participatory way of designing and redesigning of our innovation together in the living lab, that is a very good ecosystem where we can really push and bring change.
Thank you, Gazan. Yes, Professor.
Before Ethiopia come in,
We hear you, Gazan.
okay.
So please speak.
There's something on conveners of the living lab. Yes, the question was whether convening the living lab. My answer would be those or who have the motivation, have the inspiration to steer the change. So regardless whether that is a farmer or a farmer group or a university or a company, if they have it and they want to pursue this consistently, that would be the person to convene. It happens that the ones in the East African, the three or the four are being convened by the universities. This relates to the background, I think, in the agriculture. and the interactions with those stakeholders in agriculture. So it is not that is the university who should. It's about that passion and that capacity and being there to steer it. Because living lab is no, you must be prepared also to.
Thank you, Professor. So I think your remark is also very key. This is not like either the university or a farmer or anybody else to lead the living lab, but that is really the people that are inspired and that would like to share their inspirations. Those are the conveners of the living labs, if I got you right, Professor. And this can be
Correctly.
people in either role.
Yes, like Sylvia there, who's a champion, eh?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. I see a question in the chat from Guy Rudolph, and he is asking, how do you ensure the sustainability and the long-term impact of these living labs? And that is a very relevant question that we have been wondering about as well, and we have been talking about. And indeed, living labs are in a very early stage at the moment. So how do we ensure lasting impact? Who would like to respond to that question? Maybe
can I take? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Currently, the living lab depends on external funding. However, to ensure sustainability of the living lab, internal resource mobilization should be put in place. Currently, we are envisaged membership fee from the living lab members, joint project proposal development to mobilize funds, and also philanthropic donation and investment to generate financial resources are some of the roadmap we are discussing. But actually, ensuring sustastainability is a big task ahead of us. So far, our living lab is a 1-year-old living lab. It requires a lot of learning, internal learning, as well as really working for sustainability. So in short, the sustainability of living lab should rest on the living lab members, and we have to design a mechanism to ensure not only financial sustainability, but also thematic sustainability, addressing emerging issues, generation of problems. So all this should be well thought to make a living lab sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, to Watros. And I see Lucia.
Add a bit of that, if you allow.
Professor Bebe. Yes.
From my little experience, the 1 year along the road that we have had here in Kenya, in Nakuru, I see two things as would be important towards sustainability. One, do the partners have the capacity to network, convince each other, bring on board those who share on the agenda? If you already have an agenda and you get people who share with your agenda, are you able to bring them on board? Build a network that will get people along to help you. And two, getting your vision and agenda visible to attract those who can support you. So the Living Lab, those people, those groups who are working it, if the agenda is clear and they're able to have our vision, articulate this, you'll be having people who can be able to work with you. And working on a vision, if you have it, then it's something that you can work on a long term to bring sustainability towards improving achieving what you want to achieve.
Indeed, thank you. So the networking between by the Living Lab partners to the outside world around a joint vision towards regenerative and inclusive food systems is a key function of the Living Lab. And I think Lucia asked about the role of the private sector, whether the financial sector is a sector to take into consideration, and I would say so. So far, I think we have been putting it under the enablers, but it could also be actually a fourth sector. It would be nice if Professor Bebe, could you maybe respond to how you are working on linking the financial sector?
In Nakuru?
Yes. Or
Yes,
how you
in
look
Nakuru,
at it.
Yes, our experience in Nakuru is that banks have products for farming or called for agribusiness, but the conditions are a little bit not matching the conditions that farmers would want to discuss. We realized through other networks that Equity, one of our largest banks in the country, had billions of money, actually 56. Also, I can let me not commit the figure, but they said there was a lot of billions that set basically for supporting agri-based innovations. And they had worked successfully with the Kenya Forestry Service, linking it to tree growing. And we thought now with our regenerative practices, they would listen to us. So when we went there and explained to them, they said yes, it fits with what they want to support, but they have to take them through a process of financial literacy. And through that, they also engage them to understand what are their conditions, what is their investment visions, and that would form a basis of negotiating conditions that farmers may want to take loan on. So we have that group, and that's the way they have come, and they have trained all these groups. So the next stage is now making investment decisions. We brought also another group, which were insurance-based. What I saw when they presented the products, they were not able to follow it up with what I call engaging with these farmers to understand their part and discuss and then train them. So I see that as a deviation from what Equity is doing. Equity is starting right from the beginning, understanding, engaging with them and discussing with them and training them based on their challenges to be able to break. So that's the way we are improving.
Thank you, Professor. So there are multiple ways of engaging financial initiatives, and that can be formal financial sector, but also informal financial structures that help communities to finance themselves. So I see a hand from Richard and a remark from Professor Robert Kajobe in the chat, and I'm happy for that because I was about to ask for input from Uganda. So Richard, could you please speak up?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Gon. I've been enjoying this, the discussions, and I think they are really taking a very interesting direction. I would like to add my voice to the rest about the sustainability question. I think, like Dr. Theodoros said, the Living Lab is not actually a collection of innovators, but it's about innovators who choose to come to join together. So it means it is interest driven, and that to me alone shows sustainability, because when people come out of their own interest to do something, it means they already know how they are going to benefit from it, and therefore that itself shows sustainability. Secondly, universities have been involved in this in mainly because, you know, the living labs are not formal labs where everything is going to, because as they move on, their information is going to be generated and all that information has to be stored. And also all this information has to be analyzed empirically. So that itself is also a source of sustainability, because the universities are going to be there, they are going to stay, and therefore they are going to store this information and be able to, you know, unleash the information or whenever it's needed, and therefore that itself is sustainability. And also, you know, the living lab is so much hinged on a business model as well. The innovators who are here, most of them actually do work for business. And I think what will happen is new directions arising and driven by profitability rather than the living labs not remaining sustainable. But evolution of new directions may arise driven by economic factors that will occur. So I therefore think, in addition to many other aspects that indicate sustainability, this can also be very important for purposes to attain sustainability. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Richard. That's such a nice remark that you talk about interest. That is really the key of the collaboration and the living labs, and that also makes that the people that are part of the living lab feel the ownership of like carrying the living lab and sharing their information and building their networks with each other. And yes, many of the practices are based on agribusiness, indeed, like also mentioned by Professor Kajobe in the chat and Professor Yehinu in the chat from Uganda and Ethiopia. But we also see that there are initiatives that are more focused on community building in the living labs, and that really have the community building as a first objective. So there can be different interests, I think, in the different initiatives that are linked to the various living labs in the 3 countries. We are moving towards the end of this session with just 3 minutes left until the end. And I just wanted to acknowledge the comment by Tami Dlamumbulo from South Africa. And Tami writes that they are working in an informal settlement and they face difficulties in accessing finance and sometimes feel excluded from all the processes that are going on being an informal settlement. But I just very brief response from my side. I think actually the being informal or not or formal shouldn't really be a problem in a living lab setting, because I think the living lab in a living lab setting is such a collaboration, everybody can participate, be it formal or informal. And it would be interesting to see how you could reach out maybe to some of the innovation leaders in the future living labs and maybe continue the conversation about how you could also find collaborations that would support you, for example, in accessing finance, and that could also be informal finance. So we're closing. I'm giving back the floor to Amanda. Please, Amanda, do you have some final words?
Thank you, Gwen. No final words per se, but I just want to thank you and your team for such an informative and enriching discussion. A session which was so informative and rich in discussion. Thank you very much for all of that. And we apologize for the technical challenges that your speakers experienced when we started, but we're glad that everyone was able to make it. So we'll be going for a 30-minute break. We're going for recess now. And then in 30 minutes time, we'll be back where we'll be listening in on a session by ADPP Angola, who will be talking us through bottom-up approaches towards climate funding, challenges and opportunities faced by African community-based organizations, civil society-based organizations. So yeah, we're going to lunch now. And just a reminder again, that when you come back from lunch, you need to go back to the lobby and then select the next session from there. And you will then be able to participate during those discussions by doing that. And I think that's it from my side. Thank you again.
Thanks, everyone. And I just put my email address in the chat in case you would like to reach out and be connected to some of the speakers. I can link you to the speakers so that you can continue the conversation at a later moment. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.